A young girl buys a gift for her father. Then Morgan Freeman walks in and changes everything. "I'm but no words came out. Kid, you don't have enough." The cashier's words felt like a punch to Emma Carter's chest. She stared at the few crumpled dollar bills and coins in her small hands, willing them to somehow multiply. But the truth was right there on the register screen. She was short. Her heart sank. She had spent months saving every penny she could find, skipping treats at school and doing extra chores just to afford one special gift for her father this Christmas. And now, she was about to walk away empty-handed. Is kindness true power? Comment 1. Or is success just luck? Comment 0. It was a cold December evening in Chicago, and the city was alive with the magic of Christmas. Streetlights shimmered against the snow-covered sidewalks, carolers sang at the corners, and shop windows glowed with festive displays. Inside a small gift shop tucked between towering buildings, 10-year-old Emma Carter stood on her toes at the checkout counter, gripping a beautiful pocket watch in her hands. Her father, James Carter, had always wanted one. He used to talk about how his grandfather had a similar watch, how he would wind it up every morning, listening to the soft ticking sound that felt like home. Emma had saved every dime she could find to buy it for him. This was supposed to be the Christmas she finally gave something back to the man who had given her everything. But now, standing there under the bright store lights, she realized it wasn't enough. The cashier shook his head. "It went up last week. It's $20 now." Emma's stomach twisted. She emptied her pockets, counting every last coin. $17.38. Still short. Emma felt her throat tighten, the disappointment crashing over her like a wave. She couldn't go home without this gift, not after all her effort. But there was nothing she could do. She nodded, forcing back tears, and turned to leave. And then, a deep, familiar voice spoke behind her. "I think I can help with that." Emma froze. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. Standing there, calm and composed, was Morgan Freeman. Her eyes widened. She recognized him instantly, from movies, from TV, from that unmistakable voice that sounded like wisdom itself. He smiled down at her, his warm eyes twinkling. "Are you buying that for someone special?" Emma could barely breathe. What happened next would change her life forever. Emma Carter had never felt so defeated. Her fingers curled around the few crumpled bills and loose coins in her hand as she turned away from the counter, heart sinking. The pocket watch, the one she had spent months saving for, would stay right there, just out of reach. Her father, James Carter, deserved that watch. But life had never been fair to the Carters. The cold air from the store's entrance sent a shiver down her spine as she took slow steps toward the exit, trying to keep her emotions in check. She wouldn't cry. Not here, not now. But then, that voice. "I think I can help with that." Deep, warm, familiar. Emma turned, her breath catching in her throat. There, standing just a few feet away, was Morgan Freeman. Even dressed casually in a dark wool coat and a simple gray scarf, there was something undeniably powerful about him. He wasn't just a movie star, he was the voice of wisdom itself, a presence that seemed to command attention without even trying. He stepped closer, his kind eyes fixed on Emma. "Are you buying that for someone special?" Emma's words stuck in her throat, so she just nodded. Morgan smiled gently. "Your dad?" She swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." Morgan glanced at the pocket watch in the cashier's hand and nodded. "A fine choice, but it looks like you're a little short." Emma felt embarrassed saying it out loud, but she nodded again. "I saved as much as I could, but I didn't know the price had gone up." Morgan glanced at the cashier, then back at Emma. Without hesitation, he reached into his wallet and pulled out a crisp $20 bill. "Then let's make sure your dad gets his Christmas present," he said, handing it over. The cashier blinked in shock, his hands hesitating before taking the money. Mr. Freeman, sir." Morgan cut him off with a small, knowing smile. "Just add it to the total and give the young lady her change." Emma stood frozen. She had seen Morgan Freeman in movies. She had heard his voice in documentaries. But now he was standing right here, buying a Christmas gift for her father. Her hands trembled as she accepted the small paper bag from the cashier. "Thank you," she whispered, barely able to find her voice. Morgan crouched down slightly so that they were at eye level. "Tell me something, Emma. Why this watch?" Emma bit her lip, clutching the bag tightly. "My dad. He used to talk about how his grandfather had one just like it. But he never had one of his own. He's worked so hard for me, and I wanted to give him something special." Morgan nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Sounds like a good man." Emma smiled for the first time that evening. "He is." Morgan straightened up and looked around the store. Then, as if making a decision, he turned back to her. "You know, a man like that deserves more than just a watch." Emma blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" Morgan chuckled. "How about we pick out one more thing? Something that'll really make this Christmas one to remember." Emma could hardly believe what she was hearing. As they wandered through the small shop, Emma couldn't stop glancing at Morgan Freeman, half expecting him to disappear like a dream. But no, he was really here, walking beside her, asking about her father, about her life. "So tell me," Morgan said as they passed a shelf full of scarves and gloves, "what is your dad like?" Emma thought for a moment. "Well, he loves music. He used to play the guitar a lot before—" She hesitated. "Before things got hard." Morgan stopped. "Music, huh?" He tapped his chin. "Does he still play?" Emma shook her head. "He says he doesn't have time. Between working and taking care of me, he stopped." Morgan sighed, a knowing look in his eyes. "It's easy to put dreams aside when life gets tough." They moved past a shelf of books, and Emma's eyes landed on a leather-bound journal with music notes embossed on the cover. She reached for it slowly. Morgan raised an eyebrow. "That looks like something a musician might like." Emma turned the book over in her hands. "I think he'd love this. Maybe he could write songs again." Morgan smiled. "Then let's add it to the list." Emma hesitated. "But Morgan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Emma, consider this my Christmas gift to you and your dad." She swallowed the lump in her throat, nodding as she clutched the book to her chest. As they approached the checkout counter once more, people in the store began to notice. Whispers, stares. "Is that Morgan Freeman?" A man near the back pulled out his phone, trying to snap a discreet photo. Then someone called out, "Morgan, you're a legend." A few people clapped. Someone else shouted, "Gane, can we get a picture?" Morgan chuckled but shook his head, turning to Emma. "Want to help me escape?" Emma grinned, feeling like she was in a movie herself. But before they could make it to the exit, a woman in a sharp navy suit stepped forward. She looked serious. Not angry, but definitely not just another fan. "Mr. Freeman," she said, her tone professional yet firm. "Can I have a word?" Morgan's expression shifted, guarded but curious. He looked down at Emma. "Give me just a second, okay?" Emma nodded, clutching her shopping bag, as Morgan stepped aside with the woman. She watched as they spoke in hushed tones. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she saw Morgan's expression change. First surprise, then something deeper, something thoughtful. Then, to her absolute shock, Morgan turned back toward her, and this time he was smiling. "Emma," he said, his voice filled with a quiet resolve. Emma straightened. "Yes, sir?" Morgan crouched down again, lowering his voice just a little. "How about we make this an even bigger Christmas for your dad?" Emma blinked. "What do you mean?" Morgan grinned. "You'll see, but I'm going to need your help." Her heart raced with excitement and curiosity. She had come to the store hoping to buy one gift for her father. She never expected that Morgan Freeman was about to change both their lives forever. Emma thought she had just received an act of kindness. But Morgan Freeman had something much bigger in mind. What happened next would transform her father's life forever. Emma Carter had no idea what was happening. One moment, she was standing in a small Chicago gift shop holding a simple Christmas present for her father. The next, Morgan Freeman, the Morgan Freeman, was crouching down beside her, offering to make this Christmas even bigger. She clutched her shopping bag tightly, her mind racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, eyes wide. Morgan grinned, his warm, steady voice as soothing as ever. I mean, how about we give your dad something he'll never forget? Emma blinked. But I already have the watch and the journal. Morgan's eyes twinkled. I think we can do better than that. The woman in the navy suit who had pulled Morgan aside earlier took a step forward. She adjusted the files in her hands and gave Emma a reassuring smile. Emma, we know your father has sacrificed a lot for you, and we also know he once had a dream, one that he gave up. Emma froze. How did they know? Morgan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You told me he used to love music, that he used to play guitar before life got in the way. Emma nodded slowly, still not understanding where this was going. Morgan crouched again, looking her straight in the eye. What if we gave him a reason to play again? Emma felt like the world had tilted. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I don't understand. Morgan chuckled softly. Let's take a little trip, shall we? Emma barely had time to process before she was gently guided outside the shop, where a sleek black SUV was waiting at the curb. As she climbed in, she turned to Morgan. Where are we going? Morgan simply smiled. To change a life. 15 minutes later, they pulled up to a small music studio in downtown Chicago. The sign outside read, Harmonix Music Academy. Emma had never been here before. Morgan helped her out of the car, leading her toward the entrance. This place, he explained, is a community music center. They help people rediscover their love for music. People like your dad. Emma's breath caught. You mean? Morgan nodded. I made a few calls. They're looking for someone to teach beginner guitar, someone with experience, someone who understands hard work. Emma's heart pounded. This wasn't just a gift. This was a second chance. She turned to Morgan, still trying to make sense of it all. But how do we get my dad here? Morgan smiled. Leave that to me. That evening, back at their small apartment, Emma could hardly sit still. Her father, James Carter, was sitting in his usual chair, exhausted from a long day's work. His uniform still smelled faintly of the winter air, and his hands, rough from years of labor, rubbed his tired eyes. Emma couldn't keep the secret any longer. Dad? She said hesitantly. James looked up and smiled. Yeah, sweetheart. She took a deep breath. I met someone today. James raised an eyebrow. Oh, Emma nodded, clutching the small gift bag in her lap. Someone who wants to help you. Before James could ask more, there was a knock at the door. Emma sprang to her feet, rushing to open it, and there, standing in the dimly lit hallway of their apartment complex, was Morgan Freeman. James froze. For a long moment, he just stared. Morgan Freeman? He stammered. Morgan chuckled. That's what they call me. James blinked, looking from Morgan to Emma. What's going on? Morgan stepped inside, handing James a small envelope. James, I hear you used to play a little music. James hesitated, then slowly took the envelope. A long time ago, he admitted. Morgan nodded. Then it's time you picked it up again. Inside the envelope was a formal job offer from Harmonix Music Academy, a paid position as a beginner guitar instructor. James's hands trembled as he read the paper. This isn't real. Morgan placed a hand on his shoulder. It's real, James. You've spent years giving everything to your daughter. Now it's time you do something for yourself. James couldn't hold back the tears. He turned to Emma, who was already crying. You did this for me? Emma shook her head. No, Dad. Morgan did. James looked back at Morgan, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know how to thank you. Morgan smiled. Just promise me one thing. James swallowed hard. Anything. Morgan's voice softened. Never stop playing. A few days later, James Carter walked into Harmonix Music Academy. The smell of old wood and guitar strings filled the air. Young students were gathered in small rooms practicing their chords. Music was everywhere, and for the first time in 15 years, James Carter picked up a guitar. His fingers found their place on the fretboard, his heart racing as he strummed a familiar chord. It was rusty. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. Emma stood outside the door watching her father play, her heart overflowing with happiness. Morgan Freeman stood beside her, arms crossed, smiling with quiet satisfaction. "He's gonna be okay," Emma whispered. Morgan nodded. "Yes, he is." Emma thought she was giving her father a small gift. She never expected to give him his dream back. But the story wasn't over yet, because Christmas morning was about to bring one last surprise. On Christmas morning, the apartment felt different, warmer, brighter, not because of decorations or gifts, but because of something deeper. Hope. James Carter sat on the couch, his fingers lightly strumming the guitar he hadn't played in over a decade. His calloused hands, once used to sweeping streets, were now bringing music back into his home. A sound Emma had never heard before, but one that felt like it had always belonged. She sat beside him, listening, watching the way his eyes softened with each note. This was more than just music. This was a part of him coming back to life. Claire, their neighbor, knocked on the door, bringing over a small plate of cookies. "I heard the music," she smiled. "It's been a long time, James." James chuckled, nodding. "Too long?" Emma beamed. "And he's got a job teaching now, too." Claire's eyes widened. "Really?" James looked down at the guitar, his fingers hovering over the strings. "Yeah," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Thanks to someone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Morgan Freeman had given him more than an opportunity. He had given him back his dignity, his passion, his purpose. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out the pocket watch, the one she had worked so hard to buy, the one that had started this entire journey. She placed it in her father's hand. "Merry Christmas, Dad." James swallowed hard, turning the watch over, running his fingers across its smooth surface. He looked at his daughter, his eyes glassy. This means the world to me," she grinned. "I just wanted to give you something special." James pulled her into a tight hug. "Emma, you already did." As the morning light filtered through the window, James Carter realized something profound. Sometimes life doesn't give you a second chance. But sometimes a stranger does. The lesson we can all take away. Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. Never judge someone by where they are. Help them get to where they're meant to be. Dreams don't die. They just wait for the right moment to be rekindled. Because sometimes the greatest gifts aren't wrapped in paper. They're wrapped in belief.